Imagine emotionally investing in someone for years, spending thousands, a couple $100,000s only to get the dreaded object from your in-laws. A car wreck on your wedding day. Having the day completely ruined after really dark secrets about your wife comes to light. Hello everyone and welcome to Upvoted. Here are some of the most cruel wedding objections that left people in complete disbelief. Went to a wedding with my ex. It was his cousin's wedding. I hadn't met many of them, but they were light-hearted and silly with each other. So when the JP asked if there were any objections to the bride and groom's wedding, a girl stood up and cleared her throat. I laughed audibly. She just said, "I love you, don't do this." Gasps filled the air. I realized it was real. Whispering everywhere. Bride ran out crying. Groom stood there mouth agape. Everyone was staring at him. Groom left. The objection girl followed. Then bridal party and parents. A few minutes later everyone but the bride, groom and girl came back. Groom walked in visually upset, then the bride and the other woman came in behind him. They went up to the altar. Groom, "I'm sorry but there will be no wedding today," slight sob. "Please stay for food and drinks, the party has been paid for." Everyone went to the reception confused, hoping for answers. After about half an hour, the wedding party showed back up, bride, groom, woman, all sharing a few bottles of champagne, laughing, smiling. To the mic goes the bride. "I'm sorry to the groom for this, but I'd like to share with you all that I'm gay." Girl walks up beside the bride, and they kiss. Groom takes the mic. "So, three-way?" The room erupted with laughter. It was a fun but incredibly awkward wedding reception. The two women are now married with children. No idea what happened to the groom. Not my story, but this particular one gave me a good laugh. Back in the late 90s I was invited to the wedding of a guy I was in the army with. He married his girlfriend from uni in his southern, Italian-speaking, Swiss hometown church, all very traditional. During the ceremony, a girl crashes through the door obviously drunk as hell, and starts cursing in Italian that the bride cannot get married in white in a church as she is not a virgin, sucked 1,000 DS, and is not pure. The whole audience is stunned and waits for the reaction of the couple or someone in general. Suddenly the groom's mother stands up and screams at her in the most vicious voice I ever heard. "Manuela, shut the F up, everyone knows you take it up where the sun does not shine." I've been told that the girl was the groom's high school girlfriend, but he left her as she wanted to wait till marriage. Okay, so technically this wasn't an objection to the wedding, but more of a meltdown that led to a bunch of family members fighting, physically and by yelling, and then everyone leaving. So it was my mom's cousin getting married, and most of my family members on my mom's side got along fairly well. And the amount of people in attendance wasn't that big, maybe like 120? So the minister finally gets to the objections part when all of a sudden there's a huge, "What?" from the best man. Basically one of the groomsmen slept with the maid of honor, who the best man just happened to be dating. The best man found out when the groomsman said, "Man, I'm so glad I hit that," as he pointed to the maid of honor. So they got into a heated argument which leads to shoving as the bride and groom being led away by her dad, tears streaming. Then a family member stepped in to try and stop it but got clocked by the best man, then people tried to restrain them both. Then a catfight ensued between the maid of honor and another bridesmaid after the maid of honor was called some nasty names. Then family members tried to restrain them, and yeah, it went downhill real fast. All I remember afterward is my dad being super pissed, saying, "I took off a week of work just to be here only for stuff like this to happen," and he was super pissed along with my mom. We literally went back to the hotel, checked out early and went home. Oh man. One of the weirdest experiences I've ever lived through. I was in charge of the soundboard for the marriage of some good friend. This will be relevant later. The bride's parents weren't in favor of the entire thing. They were well off and felt that their Ivy League-educated daughter was too good for the groom, who grew au fait the streets in Miami. Sadly, they were missing out on the actual fact that he's the most admirable and genuine person on this planet, and you couldn't ask for a better person to be marrying your daughter. The bride and groom respectfully tried to win them over for quite a while, but once they got engaged, the fogies made their level of disapproval known by refusing to contribute financially to the marriage. The wedding date draws near, and despite various tactics from the oldsters, including the mother of the bride getting the dad to agree to not walk his daughter down the aisle, it becomes clear that the bride and groom are truly committed to one another and absolutely won't call it off. The fogies seem to resign to the end result and choose to attend the marriage. EA. Unfortunately, the day of, the mother of the bride happened to be a total narcissist and couldn't just let it go. Here's where my helming the electronic equipment intersects with the drama. The ceremony begins, everything goes as planned. I'm fading and transitioning everybody's respective music with perfection, focusing hard to ensure everything runs smooth lest it distracts from the marriage itself. Then it's time for the bride's entrance. I get the thumbs up from the event coordinator and fade up on a stunning piano and cello track. The minister asks everyone to rise, and we all stare at the entrance in eager expectation. The doors should be opened after some measures of the music, but then they don't. Music keeps playing, still nothing. The bride's music was the only one that was clipped prior to me receiving it, and it is only about 40 seconds long, so we reach the end of the track with still no bride. The coordinator and I decide to play it one more time. Same results, just more awkward. Now the room is silent, confused looks being passed around. Then we hear it. The mother of the bride had snuck out into the hall to make her objections known to her daughter one last time, face to face, just as she should have been walking down the aisle. She is hissing her whispered arguments right behind the closed doors. About 2 minutes later, mother of the bride re-enters the sanctuary and takes her seat next to her husband, seeming unaware of how unbelievably tense the room is with awkwardness, thanks to her. The coordinator talks to the bride, and another minute later we're ready to do her entrance for real. Cue the music. The doors open, the beautiful bride enters. You can tell from her face that she is feeling a lot, as you can imagine, but is still overjoyed to see her groom at the altar. She is determined to marry him. We all exhale, but then the drama continues. She makes it halfway down the aisle and her father stands up. He couldn't take it anymore and decided there was no way he was going to let his daughter walk down the aisle alone. He makes his way through his row and joins her to walk her the rest of the way. It is an amazing moment until narcissist mother of the bride strikes again. She quickly follows him and joins them in the aisle. We all hear mother of the bride loudly whisper, "I told you not to do this," to her husband. The music runs out again. They end up staying there in a huddle, holding each other and crying, for several minutes. Mother of the bride sits down, and the father and bride finish her journey to the altar, together. The minister wisely omits asking the audience for objections. The rest of the ceremony goes on uninterrupted. At the reception dinner, mother of the bride tries to save face during her toast. Fails miserably. All of the guests shower the bride and groom with new heights of love and support, and they go off into their new life together more committed than ever, thanks to her parents' determination to keep them apart. He and I were best buddies since preschool. I went on vacation with his family, he with mine. We had a falling out in high school over a girl but got over it later on. When he started to get serious with a girl, I was very happy for him. His dad was never around and his mom tried, but he needed the kind of love and sense of fulfillment that a loving partner can provide. He did well with the ladies and never seemed to be out of options, but I'd never seen him in love. Until he met her. He was really secretive about her, but, as his best friend, he told me bits and pieces and said how serious he was getting with her. He finally agreed on a double date with me and my girl. My girl and I weren't really all that serious, but we liked each other, hung out a lot, and the intimacy was great. As 20-somethings, we were both more into our careers and goals than a serious relationship. We agreed to be exclusive but honest about it if that changed. From time to time we liked to experiment with things, and that included picking up girls at clubs to bring back for the evening. She was into that as much as I was, lucky me, eh? My girl was by all standards a pretty girl. A solid 9 at any time, and when she went all out with the makeup and whatnot, a solid 10. Smart, carried herself like a modern professional woman, and practically anything goes in the bedroom. One night out on the club hunt for a third, we struck gold. This girl was perfect. That is the best way to describe her. Perfect. 5'8" or so, toned body with a flat stomach, large but not too much so breasts, a perfect booty that looked like a sculpture's creation in the dress she was in, and a face that was simultaneously angelic and teasing. She was definitely a 10+. After a few drinks and jokes, I'm good with making the ladies laugh, my girlfriend drops the first hint on her that we may be game for some grown-up fun. She practically jumped on it. We left, and within 30 minutes I was covered in every man's dream for the rest of the night. She left in the morning after a shower and some food with no hint of shame or regret. I wanted her to stay. As you can guess, the girl my best friend brought to dinner was her. Dinner was awkward, but we survived. When I spoke the next day with him, he asked if it was just him feeling awkward. Knowing how serious he was getting with her, I was conflicted. I freaked out and didn't let him know about that night my girlfriend and I shared with his girlfriend. Hey, he was a player, and after a while he would probably grow tired of her too. Right? A few days later, unbeknownst to me, my girlfriend had invited her back for another night. Apparently, she enjoyed that night as much as my girl and I did. My girlfriend didn't really know my friend and read that this girl was probably playing with him as much as he was with her, and we really had fun with her. I told them I couldn't. That was my lifetime buddy and it wasn't right.
They were already on the couch and responded by starting to make out. I said I was going to leave. They didn't respond other than to get a bit more aggressive. I was like, great. So, I told them to have fun and left. The next time I went over to my girl's house, she was there. She hasn't moved in, but she and my girl were having a fling, and according to our rules that was fine. Within a month so, we weren't really seeing each other that much. She and my best friend's girl, however, were. Like an idiot, I drank, texted, hey, I was in my 20s, I should have known better, but my now distant girlfriend, and she told me to come on over. She promised her girlfriend wouldn't be there. I go over to her place, we start having some great miss you hookup, and out of nowhere comes, you guessed it right, her girlfriend, my best friend's girl. I was like, well, if they do things and I only do things with my girl, well. Next day I felt like a douche. The alcohol was blamed and I moved on. That same day my buddy called me to say he was going to propose to her. I asked to meet him to talk it over. I tried to go the route of how well do you really know her? I almost came out and said I have to tell you something. Then I lied to him and said the reason that dinner was awkward is that we had seen her in the club a few nights prior and she was obviously going to hook up with someone else. He blew that off by saying they weren't exclusive then and he had a thing when he traveled that same week. No big deal. She accepted, the wedding is set and I'm the best man. My distant girlfriend and I are friends, but by this point I've backed out of the relationship. However, she is going to the wedding, and while I was dating around we agreed to a date for the wedding. At the rehearsal dinner, my ex and I get some alone time and she reveals how upset she is with the wedding. That my best friend's girl and she had been living together and were in love. But since my best friend's girl's parents were so conservative, she could never explain her lifestyle to them. When the person leading the ceremony asked, any legal objection to this union, I recognized the voice right away, and no, it wasn't my ex's, it was my best friend's father who was objecting to the wedding, saying he knew about her lifestyle and couldn't allow his son to marry her. The cold-hearted bastard who was never around had the guts to come forth where I, his best friend, did not. My best friend never cried or even seemed too upset. Somehow he found out the truth couple of weeks prior, but figured to go on with the wedding as it was already too late to abort mission. The reception and wedding were one event and people lingered for a good time. To this day he doesn't know about our trysts. A few years down the road he and I are still best friends, and that score from high school was even.
When my wife and I first got together, there was some concern among my family. They thought I was too young, that I should wait longer and see other people, etc. The priest at my church, where we were going to get married, was acutely aware of this and, despite having known my family for over a decade, thought they were the ones being immature in not trusting me and because they were not being very friendly to my wife. So, when the time came where he should have said, "Does anyone have any objections?" he simply didn't. He skipped that part of the ceremony completely. I don't think my family actually would have said anything anyway during the ceremony. But he wasn't going to give them the chance. It was sort of his way of silently telling them that he disapproved of their attitude. Anyway, fast forward to today, we've been married 7 years, have 2 amazing children, and my family treats my wife like a daughter. So it all worked out. Not quite what you're looking for, but close. When I was 17, I was invited as a +1 by a Russian friend I was courting to go to a wedding with her. It was sort of our first date. She warned me that it was going to be all in Russian, both the ceremony and the reception. I don't speak anything but English, but figured I'd give it a try. So anyways, the whole thing is boozy AF. The minute we arrive, my date's older sister and other guests are handing us shots to do out of the trunks of their cars. We get in and the staff hands us drinks. The ceremony goes on a while, but we're all just boozing throughout. We were 4 years underage, and the adults were just feeding us vodka and champagne like it was no big deal. At the reception, each table had about 12 bottles of various booze. Nobody at all was speaking English except my date to interpret for me between her own social interactions. There was dancing, music, and plenty of delicious food. I was having a great time despite the language barrier. People were giving toasts occasionally. Anyways, this one lady in a really tacky dress and obviously way too drunk stands up and clunks her glass to give a toast. Everyone tries to ignore it, but she persists. The room goes quiet and she speaks in drunken Russian for about 2 minutes while the room groans uncomfortably, then collapses back to her chair. My date leans over to tell me what she said as the band strikes back up, but I looked at her and said she was talking about how marriage is hard and not always so fun. It's a death sentence, but one worth celebrating, and there's nothing wrong with that. Right? My date looks at me and says, "You a-hole, you do know Russian?" No. I just have enough drinks in me to figure that one out. We dated for 2 years and have been friends for more than 15 years now. We didn't have that speak now part during our vows. However, because this thread has reminded me of this and feels somehow appropriate, I will contribute that there was a car wreck during our ceremony. My husband and I had a tiny wedding in his sister's backyard. The house is on a street corner. The yard is surrounded by a very tall white fence so you can't see into the street. Anyway, we're standing there and it's all sweet and intimate and we're getting married. Sun's out, it's warm, late June. Birds chirping and stuff. Suddenly you hear a loud crash and people screaming in the street, like what the heck, and whatever else. Several of us ran out of the backyard to see what had happened. No one was hurt. It was a simple case of someone not watching where they were going, so someone else had to swerve and they hit an electrical pole going all of 20 to 25 miles per hour or something. The one who was raging the most was the woman whose baby was in the car. As a mother myself, I don't blame her. My husband and I just kinda went out there and started asking if people were okay. One of the people was obviously livid because they'd just been in a wreck due to someone else's texting or whatever. After I, in my wedding dress, poked my head into the backseat of the one car where the baby was in the backseat, just to help comfort it and be sure it was okay while the mom was yelling at the other driver, I went up to the 2 drivers and basically was like, "Well, I'm glad you're okay. We're actually in the middle of getting married, so I realize you're upset, understandably, but maybe if you can, just don't scream at each other, just for today? Or just for right now." Do you need anything? Want some cake? Until my dad, the officiant, was like, they are fine. Let's just get back to the wedding. All that drama and excitement made it hands down the best part of the wedding. After that it was just all beer and cake and cuteness and typical happy wedding stuff. Fun memory, though. And as bad as it probably sounds, it was such an us thing that my husband and I, who have endured many a storm together, would have our vows interrupted by a car wreck. I mean that in the best way. There you have it. See you on the next video. Oh, and remember to rehydrate.